Welcome, gamers and everybody else. Now, we I know we haven't posted our podcast in a little bit. That's because we've been doing a little bit of uh experimenting over here, live streaming and everything going on. We want to kind of get back to our roots here as we just talk about some gaming news. And the best way to do that is just to kind of go through an article and talk about it, give my opinions on it, and of course, if we're not going back to our roots unless we're talking about Bungie's upcoming game Marathon, which is their next upcoming extraction shooter. I know, like we need another one of those. I know I'm kind of cynical about this already. And so we're actually going to be going through Kotaku's article. Marathon sounds like a way more approachable take on a brutal genre. Now, first of all, that headline. Um, that headline is trying to make the game sound very approachable. And for the most part, I think that's what Bungie's trying to do. Now, if you don't know anything about extraction shooters, let me give you a brief little history, something quick. But before that, if you like our content, if you want to see more of our content, or just want to support us in any way, go ahead and give us a follow. Give us an interaction, depending on what platform you are, whether that be a review on our audio podcast, whether that be a like, subscribe, follow, whatever it's called on whatever platform you're on. It helps us a lot and lets us know that we're on the right track and this is stuff that you want to see. Now, let's get into it. First of all, let's talk about what an extraction shooter is. What an extraction shooter is, basically, is you go into a map to complete an objective, and once that objective is completed, you try to get out. The best example of this, of course, is Escape from Tarkov. You go in, you pick up equipment, you complete your quest, and you move to an extraction point. If you die during the mission, you lose your stuff, and that's where this brutality comes in. They're kind of talking about in this article. Extraction shooters are brutal because it's all or nothing. You either get your supplies or you get nothing. And in a lot of extraction shooters, they are PvP based, so there's a certain amount of luck. Player skill has a lot to do with it. So it's like, okay, yeah, you've got a lot going there. Now, of course, they get in first talking about their experience with how off-putting it is. This already sets it up. Kotaku, here's the thing, I never like Kotaku. Kotaku is not, of all the gaming journalists, I'm not fond of them very much. They're very opinionated. IGN had an interesting thing where they kind of broke everything down a lot. Of course, they immediately talk about how difficult Escape of Tarkov is. Survival mechanics like thirst and specific health condition like bone fractures are accounted for, but even more casual genres like the short-lived DMZ mode in Modern Warfare 2 often results in such an uphill battle for the next match that you're usually too under-equipped to be able to withstand even encounters with the most trivial AI, let alone fully equipped players. Many folks like this kind of challenge, but it's a niche crowd for sure. Now we're moving into Bungie's game Marathon, and they're going to talk about it because they gave a gameplay reveal for the game. Now, if you have not seen the gameplay reveal for Marathon, um, go watch it. I'll be here. I'll be here. If you don't know anything about Marathon, go watch it. It's honestly my impressions of watching the gameplay trailer. It it felt hollow, in that very corporate way that I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like that you guys don't seem to understand your audience enough to respect what they're trying to do. They that's bad phrasing. And because I'm doing this recorded as live, like I do all my podcasts, I'm not going to edit that out. I'm just gonna backtrack the statement and say, I think Bungie's not capable of it, at this point. Bungie is in a very awkward state within the industry. Destiny 2 kind of like financially successful, but kind of niche already. And they're moving into Marathon, which is another very niche audience. And they are introducing something that doesn't fit into other, this kind of extraction shooter format, which is they are introducing classes. You've got the Locust soldier type character that's all about push forward gameplay. Um, Blackbird, a reconnaissance-based runner, Lich, a speedy disruptor, and Void, a stealthy runner. Now, Honestly, I'm not I'm not completely opposed to class-based games like this. That's not saying that they're fantastic, but I'm not also not saying that they're bad. They have to be carefully balanced. Otherwise you're gonna have one class run over everybody else. Uh, Bungie is very bad at this. I don't remember a time when Destiny 2 was balanced. They cannot balance classes. They either overcorrect and they undercorrect. And modern Bungie, I am not convinced they're capable of doing it. Players will be able to find various implants and cores to spice up their runners, but given the inherent traits of each runner, such as the double jump and Locust's deployable shields, it sounds like you're always able to deploy into a match with baseline defensive and offensive capabilities. Okay, now this is coming into where they're trying to talk about how this game is supposed to be approachable. What do you mean you come in with, abilities and offensive and defensive capabilities? You're supposed to jump in and find your equipment or bring your equipment in with you. I feel like that's very much defeating the purpose of an extraction shooter and really kinda taking the teeth out of it. The thing about an extraction shooter is it's an all or nothing fight. You either get in there and you die with your stuff and you get nothing. In fact, you lose resources, or you get out with the mother load or whatever supplies you're after. But now you're saying, "Okay, we're not starting from 0 every time we lose," and that's okay because, you wanna make sure you're encouraging new players and trying to but when you're encouraging new players not to turn off, but when you are breaking into this niche, a very hardcore niche, and you're trying to make it more casual, um, no, what are you thinking? And I'm not being elitist here. I'm just saying what they're doing is they're taking the teeth out of the extraction shooter. Um, coming in with your stuff. Why? What's the point of going if you have basic equipment, all like, overall, basic abilities, basic everything? It doesn't feel like you're taking as big of a risk when you're jumping into in a game of Escape from Tarkov, or you are jumping into DMZ or any other extraction shooter. You were taking a massive risk that you could lose everything in a moment. Um, and this is just saying, okay, no matter what you lose, you are going to have base abilities and base capabilities that you won't lose, which means defeat isn't as bad. Perhaps most of these classes dynamics provide a bit of a script that players should ideally follow during a match. Okay, there's the problem. A script that players should ideally follow during a match. Why? Why should let me put this in perspective. You're jumping in, you're on the battlefield, and now you're going, you're you shouldn't be scripted. None of this should feel scripted. See a locust, you know that the character has superior firepower. See a void, you'll know to expect some sneaky shenanigans. That's just class gameplay. It also means that you'll spend less time scavenging things from the map for the sole purpose of being able to fill the roles after you've died. Ooh, that is a problem. It means that you'll spend less time scavenging things from the map, which means there's probably less things to scavenge. Uh, these extraction shooters are very large on scavenging. You get your equipment, you upgrade your equipment in the field, you get based on the RNG. Now you're saying, okay, we're focusing less on that, which is the core gameplay loop of an extraction shooter. So I'm questioning whether they intend for this to actually be an extraction shooter, or if they just want a class PvP game, which technically they already had in Destiny 2, but they kind of gave up on Destiny's multiplayer a long time ago, which also kind of gives me this also gives me this kind of they gave up on PvP in Destiny. What's to stop them from giving up on PvP in Marathon? And just because it's part of the core game, I don't believe that's something that that's possible there. And of course, It means that you'll spend less time scavenging things from the map. In extraction shooters in which you're deprived of everything after death, it's easy to get caught in a death spiral of being too far unequipped for subsequent matches. Yes, I would agree. That's something that happens in these games, but that's part of the game. You have to build yourself back up. You've got to be more careful, more tactical. You got to think about taking your fights. Writing for IGN, Travis Northup reflected on his preview of Marathon, wondering how the brutal feeling that you'll never catch a break after repeat deaths and being deprived of useful loot will sit with folks who are new to the genre. Ah, and there we are. There's the core of this. How is this supposed to feel to newcomers to the genre? And I get it. You know, you want to bring in new players. You want to bring in new players. You want players to come in, otherwise your game's gonna fail. Especially if you're trying to break in. You need to introduce new players to the genre because if Marathon does not give us something that other extraction shooters don't, there's no reason for us to keep playing. There's absolutely no reason for us to keep playing. Um, I talk about this. I watch the gameplay stuff and I study that gameplay stuff. It didn't strike me as impressive. And coming off of the kind of mixed bag that Destiny 2 has been, I'm not confident that Bungie can pull this off. The character designs um don't look that great, honestly. The character designs do not look that great. You can I should have pulled some up here, but I'm just kinda going off the cuff here, wanted to talk about it after looking at everything. I don't feel like they've got this. The game has these great environment backgrounds from Unreal 5, but the characters lack a soul, and not to mention, like, the trailers are kind of confusing. If you've looked at the actual, like, cinematic trailer, it looks like something that you would want, like, Hideo Kojima working on, but somebody without his skill made it. It was very Kojima, like, high concept, and then the art director, the videographer didn't or whatever it is, the director just was not capable of doing that, which is very concerning. I'm most worried that we're gonna get a mid-game, from Bungie, which is disappointing. They're going back to their shooter roots. They did Halo. Destiny 1 was good, at least after they got updates in it. And this is not a free game. That is another big thing. This is not a free game. This is gonna be a $40 game. Yeah, this is gonna be a $40 game, and you wanna bring new people into the genre, a very tricky genre, for a $40 game that looks mid at best. They're already setting up seasonal plans and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Wait, no, why are you building a season? Because that means you're gonna be adding things like new classes, new characters. This isn't gonna feel I have my most concerning thing for sorry, the most concerning thing for me is that this will start as a team-based extraction shooter, and then it'll devolve into a hero shooter. How long before they how long before they decide, "Oh, we don't just want the extraction mode. Okay, let's add an objective mode. You're not gonna lose anything. Set up your loadout, go into the fight, sit on the box, and then we're gonna have another generic hero shooter." I don't believe Bungie's got this. I think I think we all should be very concerned about what Bungie's doing here. The old team, the old Bungie isn't there anymore. They've proven that with Destiny. They are not there, and their partnership with Sony's gonna be breathing down their neck, and everything. I mean, just look at this little gameplay segment here. The character on the left doesn't look that great. Neither does this one. They lack textures on them. And, sure, it's an alpha, but this is what you're putting out, and you're proud of that? I'm not convinced that this game is gonna be anything better than a mid game. Um, I would put it as I'm betting it's gonna be about average. It's gonna be your 5 out of 10, which is disappointing. I want Bungie to come back. Let's finish up this article here. Um While it's clear Marathon will reward players who stay alive the longest, being able to jump back in after dying with a set of useful abilities should make it easier to dust yourself off and be of use to your team. Makes in the fact that the game features no survival mechanics or an injury system that heal element specific, plus Bungie's signature talents in creating shooters that feel responsive and satisfying to play might be the extraction shooter's chance to shine. Again, this is the problem with mainstream media. They wanna coax mainstream gaming media. They wanna coax their words. Um, Bungie Bungie, please invite us to play your game early again. That's what that comes off to me as. Oh, give tell it how it is. The game doesn't look great. The game looks mid at best. The combat doesn't look it looks energetic, but it doesn't really fit the kind of extraction shooter. You're taking out the survival bits, you're taking out the wounds bits. What are we scavenging for? What are we scavenging for? Basic weapons? Is this just gonna be a war zone? Again, this is my fear. It is going to devolve into either a hero shooter or even worse, a battle royale. They're gonna start adding game modes when the survival aspect doesn't fit because they need to bring new players in. They're gonna need that. I have a bad feeling that this game is going to spiral like Destiny 2 has spiraled. You know, they introduced Gambit, then they introduced seasonal stuff, and they introduced seasonal quests, and I'm like, "No, it's not a good it's not a good idea. You should not be setting this up. A $40 game with seasons? Cool. Are all the seasons free? They better all be free. Otherwise, you're once again microtransactioning a $40 game." Honestly, I wanted to come back with something more positive than Marathon, but I'm just not convinced that Marathon's gonna be that good. I'm betting Marathon's gonna be probably mid at best, which is really disappointing right now when there's so many other things to play. If you want extraction shooters, Escape from Tarkov is probably your best bet. I mean, it's gonna be hard. It's always gonna be hard. If you don't want the scavenging kind of extraction shooter, well, Payday? I think Payday classifies as an extraction shooter. A little bit different, team-based. Again, Marathon's going for the team-based, but this is supposed to be your scavenging type of extraction shooter. That's the other issue. Extraction shooters is such a broad term. You know, Payday 3 technically counts. Halo, um, Helldivers 2 technically counts. So seeing what kind of game it is, they strip down all the survival elements. You're still trying to scavenge gear. What does the scavenged gear do? Is there enough of it to keep the gameplay loop going? Is there a reason to keep going once you're fully equipped? Or do you have your legendary gun and all your legendary attachments and your legendary armors and you just say, I don't want to take the risks anymore, and you put the game down? That's the worry that I have with this. And that's kind of everything that I've got with this. Um, I think there's nothing else to cover right now until we get more of the game, until the game comes out and we finally get to see, is this good or not? I'm gonna save my true judgment for then. I'm just not very optimistic that this game is gonna be a success. Thank everybody for listening and watching and hanging out with me. Of course, leave that subscribe, hit that like, follow, leave a review if you're on our audio, and check out our Twitch streams. You can support us there as we're gearing up, I guess. I don't know. I've been playing Monster Hunter. You can always join me for some Monster Hunter or Dungeons and Dragons. We will catch you guys later.